Hello everybody, this is Lino Tadros, and in this first video we're going to go ahead and set up everything. So we're going to go ahead and go to the link that I have in the description where it contains a GitHub IO, all the different labs we're going to go through from 1 to 7 during this series of videos. We're going to start with the first one, which is the deployment. Of course, for us to mimic a real life scenario for embedding and vectorization and using a customer service for a fictitious company, to see really how that really happens in real life, the first thing we're gonna need to do is to go ahead and deploy a Bicep script that will create at least all this the resources in Azure and Azure AI for me. So let's go ahead and start with the first one, which will be the deployment of Bicep. You will notice there is a link all the way at the top in here you can click on, or when you go to the steps where it says fork this GitHub repository, these two links are the same. And where you end up going is to this Microsoft GitHub repository that contains all the source code, all the workflows and actions and everything that we're going to need. Instead of course, creating everything from scratch, we're going to use a template of a project, and then we're going to go through all the videos to show you the tips and tricks and what makes actually embedding and vectorization and customer service, real life scenarios and audio, and using Cosmos DB and AI search and all that stuff tick using the Microsoft Azure AI stack as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Excellent. Easy enough. Once I get to this repository that I'm including, of course, that link into the description itself, go ahead and click on fork here first. So we'll say fork, and then that will take me to my training boss in here. I can give it whatever name I want. I will leave whatever name it already has in here, but the important thing is it needs to be in my account for the training boss here that I own as well. Can give it a description if you'd like. Definitely would like to copy the main branch only. I don't want anything else. And we'll say, go ahead and create the fork. And there we go. Now I'm at the training boss. I have that name that was given to me, but the important thing is everything you see in here is happening in my repo so that I can clone this, I can make changes to it, I can push, I can create workflows and actions. Of course, I will not be able to do that with the Microsoft one because I don't have permissions to do that, but in my own, I will be able to do whatever I need. So this is the first place where I just need to make sure that I've actually forked. Now the only thing left is for me to clone this on my own machine, and I'm going to actually use Visual Studio Code to be able to make changes to the code as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Excellent. So I'm going to go to code in here, and I'm going to copy the HTTPS here to the clipboard. We'll say copy that. I usually like to do, there is a lot of ways to do this. I like to do it from Visual Studio Code itself. So I'm going to go to the third one on the bottom in here. We'll say source control, and we'll say clone the repository. I'm going to paste whatever I got inside of my clipboard. I'll push enter. It's going to ask me, of course, where on my machine do I would like to create this. Let me go, for instance, to the D drive somewhere. There you go, there's the D drive. And we'll say create a new folder, and we'll say YouTube. And we'll call it AI Design Wins. How about that? Sounds good. We'll go ahead and say go for it. And inside of here, I'm going to select this folder. We'll give it a few seconds. And from that point on, would you like to open? Yes, I'd like to open. And now I have everything cloned from my own. Remember, it's from my own, not from the main one from Microsoft. I have all the code and everything needed to make this work. All right, there is also something called detected and Azure function projects in the folder tech excel, blah, 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 blah. Initialize for optimal use with VS Code. I'm going to say yes for that. I would like to actually, the Visual Studio Code to initialize that for me. We'll say yes. And then this will override the following task in the task.json. We'll say yes, override. And that will actually help me and make things go even faster during the exercises. We're not going to need that in the first or second exercise, but later on we're going to need all of that stuff to make our life easier for that as well. Excellent. All right, now bear with me here for the next minute or two. I just need to let you know what needs to be installed as far as extensions instead of Visual Studio Code to make your life easier. There is about 7 things that needs to really to be installed to make your life easier. So if you go to extensions in here on the left side in Visual Studio Code, I have them all installed already, but I'm going to go through them. We'll say C# dev kit. Alrighty. If you go to look for something called C# dev kit, I have it installed. In your case, if you don't have it installed, click on install, wait a few seconds, and you will have that installed for you. That would be great for the Azure functions, for a lot of the C# for the API. All that stuff will make your life easier, so I would recommend for that as well. Also, Bicep has a great extension. So the Bicep language support in here, make sure you click on install and have Bicep. That will allow you to actually right click on a Bicep script and install it directly from Visual Studio Code instead of actually having to use the terminal or a command line to run everything from there. It will just make your life much easier as well. The other one is the Azure Function extension. We'll say Azure Function extension. There it is, this one, Azure Function extension. It's also important to make your life easier as well, so you can right click on a specific Azure function project and being able to deploy it directly into Azure without having to do that from inside of the portal itself. So again, try to do that as well. Another one is the Azure Storage. So we'll look for Azure Storage in English. Storage like that. This one is important as well because there will be some files like in the data folder where I would like to upload some text files, some JSON files, some images, and some audio files as well if I need to. So instead of having to do that in the portal, you might as well just have this after you clone, right click on a specific file, like a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet or Word that you would like to go into the storage, and you'll be able to do that directly from Visual Studio Code. It's just something that will allow fast development inside of Visual Studio as well. We'll also need to include the Azure Function Core tool. So we'll say Azure Functions Core Tools. Okay. So again, this has to do with the it enables the integration for local debugging experience as well. This is not really an extension, but it's something that you will notice in the documentation that will need to be installed using the command line for you as well. Of course, it's simple to say that you will need to have at least the Microsoft.NET 8.0 SDK. If you don't have it installed, take a minute, go to the Microsoft website and download the 8.0 SDK. Even if you want to try it with 9.0, you're more than welcome to do that as well. I tried it with both and it will work just fine. Make sure also that the AZ CLI, the command line for Azure, is installed on your machine. If not, go to Microsoft Download and download it. Will take a few minutes to install that as well. And also the same thing with a Git. I'm using GitHub. I have Git installed on my machine, but if you don't have it, which I find it to be very difficult to believe that people do not have Git on their machine nowadays, but if not, please make sure you have a Git client available on your machine. The final thing is make sure you have Python installed as well. 3.10 and above is fine. I'm using 3.12. You can use 3.13, 3.10, but anything before 3.10 you will have some problems. So make sure you have 3.10, at least the one being used in Visual Studio Code, and your virtual environment will be 3.10 or above to make this work. Sounds good? All right. Let's go back now to our code in here. One of the things I usually love to do is to create a virtual environment so that all my Python packages do not clash with something else available on my machine. I don't like to use my global packages for my project because I want to use different versions, and clashing might not be a pretty nice thing for other projects on my machine. So you can do, of course, this by doing a Control-Shift-P and do it all the way from the top in here, or easiest way is to go to create a brand new terminal in here. And in the terminal, I'll do a Control V in here. There you go. So I'm going to say Python-M virtual environment, and you can give it whatever name. I can call it Lino, Foo, whatever you want. Okay. In my case in here, I'm going to call it AI Wins. That will end up creating a folder in here called AI Wins, and it will instantiate all the scripts and libraries that I need to be able to have a virtual environment in here. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll push Enter. And we notice a new environment has been created. Do you want to select it for the workspace folder? If you say yes in here, at least you will know that whenever you run a command or a pip, for instance, to bring a Python file, it will go into that environment. So it's a good idea to say yes for that workspace as well. So you'll notice here there is AI Wins got created here on the left. If I open it up, notice there is not much in my libraries, but I promise you there will be a lot more here very quickly. And the scripts in here are important. Note that there is a scripts with a capital S. And this is where you will be able to activate that. Some people like to see the word AI Wins, for instance, in green or something, to remind them that whatever I'm doing is part of that virtual environment. It's not going to go globally on my machine. Even though sometimes the terminal in Visual Studio Code doesn't show AI Wins, it will actually be running inside of that virtual environment. To make sure, you can always go and click on this PowerShell, and it will tell you actually inside of that pop-up that which environment are you running this in. So it doesn't have to be really that it shows AI wins, but I usually like it. So one of the things I usually do, I will come in here and I will say CD, and we'll go to AI wins. There you go. And then I'm going to go to scripts with a capital S, and then we'll say go for it. And then I'm going to say activate. There you go. And we'll run this guy. So notice now that I activated, it puts the AI wins in green here in my terminal. That is visually good enough for me to tell that whatever I'm doing in here, if I'm pipping any kind of packages in Python, they will go into this as well. Sounds good? All right, so now I'm going to go back out. We'll say CD a couple of times all the way out. And now I would like to go ahead and run all the different requirements for all the packages that I'm going to need. So where will these be available? Well, if you go under source in here on the left side, there are a lot of different folders. 3 of them are the 3 projects that we're going to be working with during these videos. The first one is a Python-based dashboard. And again, instead of spending too much time creating user interface and using like frameworks like React or Angular or Vue or whatever, we're going to use something very simple, very fast to be able to create user interface to prove the point. It's called Streamlit. This is a package in Python. You install it and it makes it extremely easy to create user interface. So you don't have to focus on that. This is the Python project of our solution in here. Then we have a vectorization function, and this is something we will see in a later video. This is an Azure function that will do all the embedding and vectorization for files for me automatically on the fly. And then there is all the APIs. This is a C# based project that will contain all the code that will create a web API that you can test locally, and you can also deploy to an Azure app service to host it in Azure as well for the API. So we have Python, and we have 2 projects in C# that you can actually work with. Plus, of course, I have my data folder. This one contains a lot of different text files, JSON files, things to experiment with as providers of data for customer service, for hotels, for FAQs, and so on. We will use also the audio has a WAV file that will mimic a 2.5 minute conversation between a customer and an agent in our hotel for the Contoso Suite, a fictitious company in here. The last one is important, and this is the one we're going to use in this video, which is the infrastructure as code. So there will be 2 different Bicep files, okay? So the Bicep file, the first one is at the bottom there that I'm going to use today, which is to deploy all the Azure resources. If you're not familiar with Bicep, open it up, learn something from it as well. How do you declare the parameters and the descriptions? How do you declare the model deployment? Everything we're going to do in here, from Cosmos DB to storage accounts, to search, to speech, to language, to web API, one for the API and one for the dashboard. So there is 2 applications will be deployed in here. The function name for Azure, the log analytics, app insight, registry for our Docker container, and even the SQL Server database. Everything will be deployed in here. So it's a long file, but again, don't be scared. This is already written for you, just to show you exactly how that works. The other Bicep file, this one is about the deployment. We're going to be deploying GPT 4.0, and we're going to deploy also for the embedding an ADA 002 with 1536 different dimensions for this one. Again, we separated the 2 so you can actually see the difference between the 2 as well. These we'll be deploying here very, very soon. The rest we'll probably get to in other videos in this series as well. All right, let me close this down. So where is the packages? Why did I create the virtual environment? Well, I did that because of the first project, the Contoso Suite dashboard. If I open this guy up, notice there is a .streamlit. And again, these are things to keep all my secrets on my machine in here. Remember, in my .ignore file, I'm saying do not check in anything with .streamlit. That means all my secrets and my passwords and whatever will stay here on my machine. So whenever I check something into GitHub, anything with .streamlit will not go back. So I need to do this for local execution, but of course, when it comes to do it in Azure itself, I will need to create these as environment variables and connection strings in the project themselves, which we will do. The important thing in here, folks, is this requirements.txt file. If I open it up, you will notice there are a lot of different packages that need to be installed. especially the OpenAI. Make sure it's 1562. And also we will have the HTTPX 0828.1 and the NumPy and the Pandas and the Streamlit packages. All of these have to be installed, so I don't have to do it one by one during the lab. So we'll do it all at once. So how do you actually run something like this all at once? Well, you can come in here. I'm going to need to move into that folder. We'll say cd source. There you go. And what is the name of this one? It's called Contoso dashboard. There you go. And from inside of this folder, I can say something like pip install -r and requirements. Oops, let me bring it back correctly. There you go. Requirements.txt. That means I would like you to install. Where is it going to install all of these? Remember, I am in AI Wins and it's activated. So when I push this up in here, go get a cup of coffee and come back because it's installing a lot of things. But hopefully soon enough, when I go to AI Wins and I open libraries, you will notice this list will get bigger, 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 and bigger. Even though there is like maybe 10 or 11 different packages, it's really going to install hundreds because some of these have other dependencies as well. So go get a cup of coffee. When I come back, we will go ahead and resume the video. And indeed, it took about 7 or 8 minutes to finish that. But if I go open up the AI Wins folder for the virtual environment, you notice under library, there are tons of things that got installed, which is good. That means it is local to my project and it has tons and tons, hundreds, not only the 12 that you see in here that got installed, which is good. Now I am ready to go ahead and get started. All right, let's go back in here. I need now a resource group in my Azure account to be able to push all this Bicep and create the resources in. Of course, you can do that with the command line. Let me go ahead and clear this by using a CLS in here. I can actually log into AZ. We'll say AZ login, for instance, in here. We'll say go for it. And that will actually allow me from the terminal itself to be able to log in. I'm going to tell it I'm going to use, this actually comes up, and I'm going to tell it I'm going to use my account in here for Lino. And it will open it up. Automatically will show you all the different subscription. I have a lot of different subscriptions in here. And I'm going to actually go through some of them until I find out the one that I want. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger in here. And you will notice the one I want really is the Microsoft Regional Director one, which is number 2. I'm going to say 2 right there. We'll push enter. And we are in good shape. I'm going to do a CLS again. I know now that I am logged in through the terminal to my one of my subscriptions I'd like to use for this. I can now go ahead and do an AZ command, for instance, like AZ group create, and I can give it, I want it maybe in East US or East US 2 or something like that, and I can give it a name of the resource group. Of course, if you prefer to do this with the user interface itself, there is no problem. Let me show you. I can come in here to my Azure portal. I'm logged in, and I'm going to say create a new resource group. And in the resource group in here, I'm going to put it in the correct subscription. And maybe this one, I'm going to say YouTube for YT. And I will say, let me put an RG in front of it so I can remember what this is. YouTube, I will say AI Design Wins. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. You can put it in the East US. I'm not going to do that right now because we are in December. And there is a lot of different load balancing happening in the retail business all over the United States. So it becomes really hectic to find any VMs available. So I'm going to actually move that to East US 2. So let's go ahead and do that. The secret in here, you need to take a look at which region you're going to use, whether it's in the United States, in Europe, in the Far East, or Australia. You want to make sure that it has 2 things. First of all, access to OpenAI and specifically GPT-4o for these labs. But that's not enough. You need to make sure that this region also have summarizations turned on for that region. Sometimes you will have access to GPT-4o, but you don't have summarization, for instance, or something like that. These 2 things have to happen. And sometimes it will tell you that East US is available for both of those. But again, because of retail and load balancing and heavy use might not work smoothly. So I'm going to go with East US 2 for this one. I'm going to say review. And I'm going to say, go ahead and create. That will be a completely brand new RG here for the YouTube AI Design Wins. And that will be good enough for me. All right, let me close this guy down. And I'm actually now ready to go ahead and run my first. Let me go here under source. And we will go to the infrastructure. So I'm interested in running this deploy Azure resources Bicep. Again, like everything else in Azure and in Visual Studio Code, there is multiple ways to do that. The first one, of course, is to come and do Control-Shift-P, okay, to open up this command line with the greater than sign, and we'll say, we look for the word bicep, we'll say bicep, and there will be a lot of different things that you can do. That's because I installed the extension for bicep. What I'm interested in is to deploy the bicep file, but I'm not going to do it this way. There is even an easier way. Go to the bicep file, right click on it, and we'll say deploy bicep file right there. We'll say deploy. And once the extension wants to sign into using Microsoft, yes, go ahead, go for it. I'm going to use the Lino, I'm already logged in, and then it will come up with a deployment name. This is the suggested name. It's a random name with numbers after it. If you don't like it, go ahead and give it whatever name you want. I'm going to actually leave it. I really don't care. We'll push enter on this guy. And then once you do that, now it's going to try to take everything inside of this Azure resources, and it will tell you, I found all of these subscriptions. Which one do you would like to deploy to? There is my second one here, Microsoft Regional Director. Let's click on that. And then select the resource group. Remember the one I just created? There it is, the RG YouTube AI Design Wins. Let's click on that. And then this one, you can actually keep it at none. It's fine. We'll say, I don't have any parameter. Everything is hard-coded inside of this bicep file. We'll say none. And now sit back and relax. This might take actually 10 to 15 minutes. And when it comes back, it will tell you if it was successful or not. If you can't wait to find out whether it's successful or not, notice there is in the terminal an HTTPS portal link in here. You can actually copy this guy and go take a look inside of the portal about the progress of creating all the resources. So you are more than welcome to do that if you're not patient enough to find out if everything's successful or not. I'm hoping that with the US East 2, this will be successful and all our resources will be in good shape. Again, you can take this URL that is in the terminal for the deployment, and you can go ahead and take a look one by one until all of them. There will be tons of them. That's why it will take maybe 15-20 minutes to finish that. I'll be back when this is done. And indeed, it took about maybe 10 minutes or so, which was pretty fast. And it looks like everything was successful. Let me go ahead and make sure that is the case. I'm going to open up the portal again. Let's go to the resource group we just created. And I should be able to see all the resources. See, there is an API management service. There is a couple of app services, one for the API. And notice here there's one for the dashboard. So this will be the Python application. And this one will be the API in C# application. I have my Azure Cosmos DB, Application Insight, the plan for the app services, the function app. Everything has been log analytics, SQL Server, the speech, the storage account. A lot of different things got created, but again, we didn't have to create one by one. That's the beauty of Bicep. All of them don't have anything deployed to them. This is just placeholder resources, okay? We still have to deploy to each and every single one, which we will do over the course of all the videos for this series. Sounds good? I hope this was enjoyable for you to see how the whole thing will get deployed. Easy peasy. And now we start from the second video where we're gonna actually start doing some useful things. Let's go for it.